Biden will hand the left-wing mob the keys to your kids' classroom. Earlier today, I took a historic stand against the hateful lies being fed to America's youth. The parents know all about it. And I checked. They're doing it in Wisconsin, too. I'm a little surprised. I'm a little surprised I'm a little surprised. I know I'm a little surprised you let it happen, actually. But we're going to get rid of it. I announced that we're launching a new pro-American lesson plan for students called 1776 Commission. We're going to teach our children the truth about America, that we're the most exceptional nation ever to exist, and we're getting better every single day.
Biden will hand the left-wing mob the keys to your kids' classroom. It's true. It is true. That's what will happen. Joe Biden doesn't really care. He just cares about how he's perceived and whether his family will continue to be in good standing with the Democrat establishment, get put on boards of companies, get book deals for books they don't even write, for astronomical sums of money as kind of a payoff for being good for the Democrat cause. But he's gonna be a puppet of the left. And even AOC is out there saying, "Oh, don't worry. I mean, once this guy gets elected, we're going to pressure him for the Green New Deal and for amnesty and just all kinds of socialism." That's going to be the plan. Play 17.
We continue to push Vice President Biden on issues from marijuana to climate change to foreign policy, and making sure that we continue to fight for a progressive agenda in our future.
What would be the main issue? You think it's climate, where he needs to be more progressive, or is there another one that you think is at the top of the list?
I think overall, we can likely push Vice President Biden in a more progressive direction across policy issues. I think foreign policy is an enormous area where we can improve. Immigration is another one. Criminal justice is another area where we can pursue a lot of progressive direction.
No humility, no walk back at all, nothing from the, which you mentioned, criminal justice reform, the people who have been saying for the last 5 months now, or 4 months now, whatever it is, 5 months really, that if only we took a different approach to policing, we'd all be better off and safer. No, actually, more people are dead, more people have been raped, more people are being attacked in cities as a result of these policies. Do you think any of them feel any responsibility for creating the environment that made that all more possible? You think AOC? You think Ilhan Omar? You think, Nancy Pelosi? Oh, we'll get to Nancy, because she's realized that the Democrats do have a liability here. I won't forget that one. Turns out Nancy actually has finally said, hold on, maybe rioting and looting is a bad thing. So it's not on the criminal justice issue, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. So they're going to push Joe. They're going to push Joe to the left. And the president mentioned the 1776 commission. Now, here's what's going on. Your kids are being taught the 1619 Project in school. This is a New York Times. It's really a long form editorial essays that take the position that slavery is the real founding of America. That the founding of slavery was the real founding. So that was in 1619, and that the ideals of the founders were lies when they were written. They explicitly write that and say that. That the American Revolution was done. The American Revolution was motivated to protect slavery. That's actually why we broke away from the United Kingdom. And it also seems to take this position, because I've read through the essays, that, it's because Great Britain was so moral. Great Britain continued to engage with, trade with, involve itself with the New World slave trade a long time after the colonists rebelled in 1776. Just because they outlawed the owning of slaves doesn't mean that they weren't very complicit in all kinds of economic transactions based off of slave labor. And they also used to engage in a process. This is different. I'm not comparing this to racial slavery, but they used to engage in a process of impressment of U.S. sailors, or rather taking people and making them sailors when they weren't, which people would often die doing that, which was not as bad as the religious slavery that the Barbary states inflicted against Americans and Europeans right around the time of the American founding too. And as you'll recall, with the war with the Barbary pirates, that was our first foreign war, was that they were enslaving people, folks. That's what was going on. They were Americans being enslaved by the Barbary states. No one talks about this, though, really. No, because we're the only people that have to constantly confront the history of what was happening, 200, 150, whatever it is, 100 years ago. But the 1619 Project is riddled with major factual inaccuracies, and it does take a deeply anti-American viewpoint, and that's what is going to be taught in the schools. So kids will come home and they'll say, Mom and Dad, you just don't understand. You're just not woke enough. Capitalism is based upon the slave trade. That's one of the essays in the 1619 Project, that the entire system of keeping close track of things, overseeing labor and costs, and the framework of capitalism was created on slave plantation. That's one of the essays that they write, and that effectively American wealth all came from the slave trade. It's interesting enough. It never gets into the fact that there was a major abolitionist movement, which had people like Frederick Douglass, who were black, and it had people who were escaped former slaves. Also, there were a lot of white Americans who were part of the abolition movement. It just pretends like there was no abolitionist movement in the country, that the North wasn't fighting very early on to try to push back and then end slavery, that we didn't fight a massive civil war with hundreds of thousands dead and hundreds of thousands more maimed horribly, lost arms and legs to end slavery, right? It doesn't deal with any of that. It just is America's super racist, was always racist, and the only way to make it better now is to create effectively a racial entitlement state where white people are constantly apologizing, and that in law there will be benefits created for certain groups. Fascinating that when we talk about, diversity and inclusion, it's black and Latino individuals who are supposed to benefit from this. Latinos have never been enslaved in this country, but nonetheless, they're always included in this group because this is political. This is about political power. But Trump is going to have this commission that will look at it. I don't know how successful they'll be in turning it back. I think a much more important dynamic that's playing out right now is how many people are figuring out that public school is not this completely, entirely necessary thing that nobody can live without. It's not true. It's not true. And I think people are starting to see this because they're homeschooling and they're realizing they can do it. You can homeschool your kids. And imagine a world. I mean, I remember feeling, and I went to Catholic schools in New York. They're private Catholic institutions. So I was lucky in that regard. I didn't go to public school in the city. Most of the public schools here are terrible. Some are very good. You have to get into the good ones by scoring at a high test level. I remember, though, feeling like I was always tired in school. The day was far too long, and it felt a little bit like it was, a penal colony sometimes. And I went to nice places. Don't get me wrong, but, you're in there. You get there at 8:30 in the morning. You're done at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And it's just a lot of making you deal with stuff all day. And it's largely driven by they want kids to be, it's the adult work schedule, like the basic adult work schedule is what drives the kids. Because really, I think if you were to have kids with 3 or 4 hours of instruction, especially if it was individualized on a daily basis, they'd be in much better shape. We have these old structures that are starting to come down, these old concepts of work, of schooling, and I think that can be a real benefit from the insanity of these lockdowns and everything else that's going on. But public schools have become left-wing indoctrination centers for your kids. That's obvious. And trying to take this on is a worthy goal, but it's going to be a long-term one. It's going to be very complicated. It's not going to be easy to do. And so I think that everyone needs to understand right now that we got a lot of work on this one. The public school system is just completely overrun. If you were to tally up how many people have been arrested at these BLM and Antifa protests, if you were to count up the number of public school teachers and social workers, I bet those are the two. For those who have jobs and aren't grad students or college students themselves, like that sorority girl from Pennsylvania who's got $1 million bail on her now because of a riot she took part in. Too bad. I think that you'd see public school teachers and social workers are the most heavily represented. That's my guess. That's my assessment. And I know there have been some, but that's who you would expect to be there. The 1619 Project is meant to be Marxist, meant to be divisive, meant to tear at the underlying fabric of the country, all under this claim that we're confronting our past when there's no effort made at balance or even, in many cases, efforts to correct inaccuracies. There's no evidence whatsoever in any of the major writings that the American Revolution was spurred on by a desire to protect slavery. There's actually no evidence for that. And that is a central assertion in the primary essay written by Nicole Anna Jones, who's also an idiot Marxist. She believed that there was a plot, some like white nationalist plot, to pretend that there were kids shooting fireworks at each other in poor minority neighborhoods in New York City. I mean, she was one of the people that she retweeted that. So that's who's writing for the 1619 Project. We should all remember that. People that you should not take seriously as thinkers and intellectuals, but you have to take seriously as a problem because their ideas, their brainwashing is being applied to your kids. Now, you also have the Princeton University news that I think is fantastic. I want to add this into the mix too. We're talking about education and how we can fight back against this stuff. Princeton University's president, and now this is a school that, of all the schools, I think Princeton is the elite universities. In some ways, the snobbiest. I mean, it's not Harvard or Yale, but it thinks it's even fancier in some ways. They've got these kids that are partying in what they call eating clubs, which are these multi-million-dollar mansions. I mean, they're true mansions. I've been inside them. And that's where they throw parties. They're tremendously decadent. And anyway, that's Princeton. And the president, because everyone now has to show how woke they are, gave a speech where he said, look, we have racism, running to the core of this university, racism in ways that we need to confront. Basically, Princeton's a racist. We have racism running through our system. We're systemically racist. Okay? That's what the president of Princeton University says. Well, Princeton gets federal funds. So that means they're subject to Title VII, Title IX. That means that there are regulations, there are laws that apply to Princeton University. And you're not allowed to discriminate. You're not allowed to be racist. So you know what the Department of Education under Betsy DeVos has just announced? Okay, Princeton, you want to give a big speech? You want the president, the head of the whole place, to say we're a racist school and we need to confront this? Well, federal government's going to help you out. Do a full-scale investigation, a civil rights investigation for discrimination of Princeton University. I think this is fantastic. I think this is absolutely great, and it's a long time coming here. It's a long time before, we've had to wait a long time for something just like this. You're going to go around and say you're so racist all the time because you want to. Remember, they say they're racist to get applause, not to confront anything. Oh, I'm so racist at Princeton. I mean, they're not saying any individual is, the institution, the system. Calling out systemic racism is meant to get you a pat on the back. It's not meant to be taken seriously that anyone's really responsible and going to do anything. It's political. It's posturing. Well, there's $75 million of federal funding that has gone to Princeton University in recent years. Often people forget this, and universities do get a lot of federal funds. So, they can't just play this game of, oh, we're actually private, so we can discriminate in any ways we want. No, you can't do that. That's not allowed. And I think this is wonderful. Wonderful that they're making them live with the words they use. They're holding them accountable to the things they say. This absolutely should be happening. And we'll see how Princeton comes out on this one. I mean, Harvard University, Yale University, these places discriminate on the basis of race. They should be sued. This is illegal what they're doing. It's wrong. Now they're going to have to start defending themselves more. What does losing your home have to do with the COVID-19 pandemic? Well, you see, home title theft is a cybercrime, And cybercrime is up about 75%, according to the FBI, during the COVID pandemic. So here's how it works. The bad guys find your information. It exists online. Then they use a quitclaim deed to kick you off, put themselves on. They take out loans against your home's equity. You often won't find out about this until you start getting the bills in the mail or maybe even a foreclosure notice. You've got to create a virtual barrier around your home's title with Home Title Lock. The usual identity theft services do not protect you. Go to HomeTitleLock.com and make sure you use the promo code BUCK to get 30 free days of protection. That's HomeTitleLock.com, promo code BUCK for 30 free days of protection. One more time, HomeTitleLock.com, promo code BUCK. That will get you 30 free days of protection. You can also check to see if you're a victim of this crime and don't even know it.
Do you see ways that you've benefited from white privilege?
Sure, I've benefited just because I don't have to go through what my black brothers and sisters have had to go through, number one. But number two, grow up here in Scranton. We're used to guys who look down their nose at us. We're looked at people who look at us and think that we're suckers. Look at us and they think that we're not equivalent to them. If you didn't have a college degree, you must be stupid. If, in fact, you didn't get to go to an Ivy school. Well, I tell you what bothered me, to tell you the truth. Maybe it's my Scranton roots, I don't know. But when you guys started talking on television about Biden, if he wins, will be the first person without a Ivy League degree to be elected president, I'm thinking, who the hell makes you think I have to have an Ivy League degree to be president? I really mean it. I found my backup. No, I'm not joking.
No, we know you're not joking, and we also know you're an idiot. Good job, Joe Biden. Thanks for explaining everything. Not because he didn't go to an Ivy League school, just because he's a moron. But I think it's so funny. He's like, what do you mean, man? Make me president. Based on what? Based on what? This guy is just a career bureaucrat. This guy, he runs for elected office in Delaware. All you got to do is get enough donations from the credit card company, and you say whatever you need to. And once you're the guy, you're the incumbent, and you just stay there. You do what you got to do. You play the system. It's just amazing. Well, this is what we want. We want a political system with people like this at the very top of it, the Democrats tell us. The total loser. I mean, there's so much about him that is unimpressive. It's honestly stunning. He used to lie about how he was a good student even at a not impressive law school. And turned out he was actually the bottom of the class in the not impressive law school. So what makes anyone think that he would be a good president? I mean, I really want to know, where is the evidence, whether it's on ideas, on character, on temperament, that suggests that Joe Biden would actually do a good job? I just kind of wonder about this. I sit around and ask the question, what exactly would it take for Joe Biden to make this case? And, here we are. But yeah, he's the other pretense that I'm not going to let go is that the Democrats represent Main Street. Joe Biden yesterday tweeted out, this election is Scranton versus Park Avenue. So Park Avenue is one of the most famous and ritziest streets in New York. I'm quite familiar with it. And I can tell you that Park Avenue overwhelmingly voted Democrat in 2016 and will again. Probably 4-1, maybe 5-1. Yeah. So this idea that it's just those people trying to get by, those good middle-class families that are all Democrats. No, it's the lib elites that Joe Biden is appealing to and the dependents on the state. That's the Democrat base. People who don't have to worry about government policies because they're so rich, and people who need government handouts. That's the core of the Democrat Party. From one of the best thriller writers of all time, #1 New York Times bestselling author Vince Flynn comes Total Power, a Mitch Rapp novel by Kyle Mills. In this next thriller in the best-selling Mitch Rapp series, it's a race against the clock when ISIS takes out the entire U.S. power grid and throws the country into chaos. Story keeps you on the edge of your seat while taking you through a destructive cyber attack on our nation, making you ask yourself, will it be lights out for America, or can our top assassin save us from plunging into darkness? The Real Book Spy calls Total Power a serious contender for Best Book of the Year. If you're a fan of suspense and thrillers, if you love the Mitch Rapp series about an elite counterterrorism agent, you're going to love this book. Take Back the Power, Total Power. This is the new Mitch Rapp thriller from Vince Flynn. It's available now in hardcover, ebook, and audio. This is one of the best thrillers you're going to find. Perfect time of the year to dive into it. Take Back the Power with Total Power. To just bring home how much we're bearing down on the big day, early voting's already started in Virginia today, folks. 45 days out. And there are long lines. People are clearly motivated to get out there. Oh, I thought they were all too scared to vote in person. Oh, it turns out that's not the case. Turns out standing outside and casting your ballot is, waiting in a line outside and then casting your ballot for a minute inside is not going to get you some terrible COVID outbreak in these places. But remember, they're trying to lie about that too, so that they can extend the deadlines for how people can vote, or what they're able to do. This Pennsylvania Supreme Court, obviously Democrat dominated there, they said that they've got a 3-day lag now after the election where you can still get ballots in if they're postmarked within 3 days. So now you could even have a situation where if it's a super close race in Pennsylvania, people are going to vote the day after Election Day and it'll be fine. I mean, this stuff is all so transparent. But anything to win, friends, anything to win. Make sure you're very clear on that part of it. There's nothing about the underhandedness of this that upsets them. There's nothing about the obvious distortion of the intent of some of these voting rules and regulations. Anyway, it's just nuts. Just nuts. I mentioned to you Nancy Pelosi, who is finally is finally willing to say that people, here you go. Going back to the law and order issue for a second, she's like, look, I mean, we love protests, but maybe knock off some of the bad stuff people have been doing. Play 4.
Which leader spoke, the gentleman on the other side said, where are you when you're talking about violence, this or that? We're there. We support peaceful demonstrations. We participate in them. They are part of the essence of our democracy. That does not include looting, starting fires, or rioting. They should be prosecuted. That is lawlessness. I'm very proud that Joe Biden has presented the clarity of that, making a distinction that I don't think our colleagues quite understand, but the American people do. And a poll released today said that the American people support congressional Democrats over President Trump in terms of dealing with the issue of crime in our country.
Yeah, right. I mean, come on, Nancy. This is a joke, right? We all know what has been happening here. Democrats have been turning on cops, encouraging looting, rioting, lawlessness with at least their tacit consent or with their silence, with their misdirection away from what has been happening. But man, those internal polls for Democrats on the law and order issue must look real bad because Nancy's coming out and she's like, hey, we don't like the looting and the arson and the rioting. Yeah, sure you don't. She just discovered this now. Here, I put out a challenge. Someone find me, she said that we've been saying it all along. Someone find me Nancy Pelosi calling out the violence, the arson, the looting before the middle of September, 45 days before an election. So somebody please find that for me. I'm wondering if that clip can be found. Oh no, I'm pretty sure it can't. I'm pretty sure that there's no way anyone's going to find it because it didn't exist because that's not what the Democrats are up to with any of this. That's not actually what they think. That's not what they believe. So of course there's not going to be a clip that shows Nancy Pelosi or other Democrats even denouncing this. It's a new thing, and it's because the polls finally turn and people realize that BLM is a movement that makes everything worse for everybody. It doesn't actually improve anything. Next up here, I also want to talk to you about this video. Speaking of BLM, I've told you I don't really like the term Karen. People disagree with me on this, but I think it's being used in ways that some folks don't realize. But here we have somebody who is referred to online. I've seen as being a Karen, who is clearly a supporter, I suppose, of Black Lives Matter rhetoric, and she's completely losing it on a store manager. Producer Mark, do we know where the CVS is?
I can look, but I'm not sure off the top of my
Or
head.
if you find it, let me know. It's a CVS. Which, I'll just say that I live next to I don't know if it's a Rite Aid or a Duane Reade. I always get them confused. But as I've told you, everything is under lock and key. It's really annoying. And it's also really sad because everything's under lock and key because people just go in and steal all the time. There's constant theft. I asked the employees, I said, why I can't buy, I can't buy Zyrtec, or I can't buy chocolate. I can't buy, face wash. I mean, all kinds of stuff. Can't buy any of this stuff unless you get somebody to come and unlock it for you, because it can't just be out in a store. There's a lot of theft. I was under the impression, and apparently, as you'll hear in this video, I was wrong. I was under the impression that everyone out there understands that theft is bad, that shoplifting is wrong, that you shouldn't do it. Well, this woman has a very interesting theory, and it's not the first time I've heard it. I remember she took this video. So she believes that what she is saying here is righteous. She thinks that this depiction of herself berating publicly a store manager of a CVS who called the police because people were stealing from his store. Her view, this woman, I don't know her name, not identified yet, her view is that it is wrong, it is evil to call the police on the shoplifters. And you definitely need to hear why. Play clip 1.
May I ask why you called the police on those two men?
CVS policy dictates that if they're shoplifters, the exit store with merchandise unpaid for, we should get the police involved. And if the police apprehend them, we should issue a barring notice.
Okay.
So I actually did not elect to press charges. I said, hey, look, I just want them to know they can't come in here anymore because they shoplifted, and I just need them to sign that, and I need my merchandise back. And the officers obliged, and the guy said the same thing, thank you, and they left.
It's not your merchandise, it's the store. So you know what happens when the black men or black people, and you decided to call the police on two black people that allegedly took something from the store because you're willing to uphold the policy, and they could have lost their lives.
We can agree to disagree on this because I don't work for you, and I follow my company's policies, not your policies, where I can appreciate your concern.
So you're willing to risk someone's life for what, $30,000 a year?
There was no risk, in my opinion. Thank you. You have a great night.
What is your name?
My name is store manager.
No, what is his name?
No one's going to tell you my name when you're sitting here videotaping us so that you can try and elicit some sort of violence against me. It's not going to happen.
Elicit violence against you? You just elicited violence against two black men by calling the police on them.
We got to walk away. When one of them had a warrant, he could have been arrested, and the cops still let him go.
Just listen to yourself. You work with black folks. You just remember that.
Wow. This is not an isolated mentality. I can tell you that right now. There's more of this. You'll hear people say this. I've seen other stuff like this on social media where in trying to enforce the law at all now is considered racist. That there are people that believe that it's racist because cops will literally kill unarmed black men for absolutely any reason. It's constantly happening. You need to be afraid of it. I mean, this is the great, big, evil lie of the BLM movement, and you're seeing what it has done. The same way that people think that they're going to catch COVID because you don't have a mask and you walk past them for 2 seconds, 10 feet away, but if you don't have a mask now, oh my God, they're at a COVID risk. The same way that people's brains have been rotted with that absurdity, people now also think that police being called to any incident that involves a black man or black men is putting their lives in imminent danger. This is part of the theory now. This is part of the logic. I also think it's just so interesting. She goes, allegedly stole. No, he saw them steal, lady, okay? Like, allegedly is for the lawyers. I'm sure that the two black men that the store manager called the police on, he did it thinking that he saw them steal. And he's running the store, and I think we can trust him to know if people are stealing. It's not a very hard thing to understand. They have things, they took things, they didn't pay for them. But now you're not allowed to call the police, they say. You're not allowed to call the police because you're putting people's lives in danger. See, this is just an extension of the words are violence mentality the left had that they really started around 2016 when Trump came into office, that your words make me feel unsafe. That your words make me feel unsafe. Therefore, you're not allowed to use those words anymore. You see, it's all about power dynamics. It's all about controlling you by creating a framework, a thought framework where it's a physical risk for people to have to hear things that they don't like. A physical risk to them. That's quite a stretch, isn't it? But that's what they've said. You know, your words are literally like violence, they will say to people, because you don't agree that there are 37 genders. It's literally violence. You're erasing trans people. It's violence. What? I'm not erasing anyone. Use the wrong pronoun. Dead naming is violence. That's another one. So if you refer to the previous name of Chelsea Manning, which is Bradley Manning, and you're allowed to change your name, so I'll call people whatever name they want. I got a weird middle name as a first name and, the whole thing. But his name was Bradley Manning, and if you bring that up, they call it dead. You're supposed to ignore that. It's like Soviet rewriting of history. You're not allowed to say that. Right? Remember the guy the WikiLeaks guy who then transitioned and prison, the whole thing. Dead naming is violence, they'll say. It's basically a form of violence because you're erasing a person's identity. Now, that's not actually, violence is violence. Things that people don't like is not violence. It's not the same thing. And here, calling the police for any reason on a black man, according to this woman, who I don't see her. I'm going to guess she is African-American. I do not know. I don't think you can see her in the video. That is encouraging violence against people. And she's doing this, putting a store manager, she's like, for what, $30,000? Notice this was in D.C. Producer Mark just told me. This was in Washington, D.C. She's putting down somebody who's working, trying to earn a living, trying to pay their bills, providing a necessary service, being responsible, and doing what he's supposed to do by company policy as well as common sense, which is people are breaking the law, they're stealing from you, call the cops. And that's not allowable. That's not allowable. Producer Mark, thank you for the woman who is, she is white, in fact, who is making this video, which makes it even more amazing. Wow. So she's one of these lunatics, the white liberal women who are woke are really the craziest people in America now. They really are. There's nothing else that compares. You see in these videos at the BLM protests, they're like, it's literally black lives at stake, and they're screaming, and they didn't really believe this. I didn't really think this is legit. It's unbelievable. Producer Mark, thanks for the heads up on that. I just assumed, if she's going to be so high in mind, I believe the store manager to me looks like he's a person of color, Latino. He might have, one parent who's black. I can't really tell. Look, I don't know, right? But you can look at the guy. He looks to me like he may be, like you would classify him as non-white. So here you have a white woman who is, at least from what I can see in the video, lecturing a manager who is a person of color about how he is putting black lives at risk by calling the police on shoplifters. As if the police are going to show up and be like, you stole a tube of toothpaste? Bam! Just start shooting them. It's not how it works, as we know. That's not what ends up happening. But you're seeing the mass hysteria. You're saying, and also the viciousness of trying to put someone, who do people think they are? Trying to, ruin someone's day, perhaps even ruin their life by, making them a target of a lib desire to show, wear a mask, don't call the cops. Why aren't you doing this thing that I want you to do? Just these petty little tyrants running around. They're going to put everyone on video to shame. They like to shame everyone else. Such losers. Honestly, anyone who does is such a loser. So anyway, I find it kind of stunning and yet also very, very indicative of this widespread mindset now, where Democrats think that they can just get away with this crap, and the media just plays along with it.
Does anybody in America believe that Donald Trump has an affinity towards his cult-like supporters? This is a guy, as you said earlier, who wanted to live in an apartment that was all mirrors and gold, that wanted to outfit his jet in all gold, and who is a professed germaphobe. So I think it really rings true that he considers his supporters disgusting. And I also think she's a hero. I mean, look at her courage. This is going to impact her life. And I compare her courage to United States senators, the Republican United States senators. I mean, we have Mitt Romney alone on an island, and all of the rest of the Republican senators are hiding like reptiles under a rock, refusing to stand up for what they actually believe in.
Pence's former lead coronavirus task force aide slams Trump, and now we're all supposed to think it's a selfless act of heroism. And that's Claire McCaskill, another intense mediocrity. That's Claire McCaskill coming out there saying, "Oh, look, another person who's being so brave." What's her name? Olivia Troy, Homeland Security Advisor to Pence and his lead staff from the White House Coronavirus Task Force. Charged in a 2-minute video, Trump failed to protect the American public because he only cared about himself. Friends, this is career positioning. She's like, you know what? I can either be someone that no one had ever heard of. I'd never heard of this person until today, who worked for the Trump administration, or I can be a hero to the left just in time for Biden to perhaps win. It's good eating on the other side, as they say. Far more media opportunities, far more book deals, social media will love you, the whole thing. Oh, but let's pretend that it's a brave thing. That's my favorite. Let's pretend that there's bravery involved in this decision. I love when libs do that. A strange newfound respect for a former Republican, so they can be used like a snotty tissue. It's disgusting.